Coming as no surprise to anyone who's been keeping tabs on the situation, it looks like Coach Darvin Ham, coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, has been relieved of his duties. This is coming from Adrian Wojnarowski as of 6 minutes ago. And the funny thing is, I was already making a video about the Lakers. It's very interesting that this happens now. And kind of interesting that it also happens at a time where you would think more people will be looking at the roster construction and even LeBron James himself as opposed to the head coach. Darvin Ham actually gets excused with just after 2 seasons. He has a 90-74 record, so he's above 500. Also comes in with a Western Conference Finals playoff berth, in-season title, and 2 play-in victories. Now, here's the one thing I will say. We saw this coming a mile away. We knew exactly what was going to happen when they did not make it past the Denver Nuggets. I will say this, the Denver Nuggets just have the Lakers number. There's not many teams that I think would have been able to compete with the Lakers just because of the sheer size and physicality outside of that. And at the end of the day, they've made way too many scapegoats for the lack of, let's just say, I don't want to say leadership because I do think LeBron is a good leader. But you're at a point where you have to really start having some real conversations because the way that roster was constructed, the way that they actually did not allow the point guards to be the point guards and the way they kind of forced people to be shooters and play unnaturally, I think it's now coming more to a head in the fact that people are starting to realize that LeBron James requires a lot to be who he is in the flow in the flow of that game, and I think it's a very, very, very bad thing and very toxic situation, like Kevin Durant mentioned, when you play with LeBron James, or in this case, when you coach him. Now, I'm going to say this. Darvin Ham did not do himself any favors. He did have lineups that didn't make sense. He did have certain ways in which he played players that made you say, well, what'd you go with that lineup for? But I will say that at times, I think this was him trying to find out how to put players in the best position next to LeBron James, and LeBron James not necessarily taking a step back. What I mean by that is, I have always said this. I've said this for the last decade. If LeBron James did less and allowed his teammates to do more earlier, not just when you really need it, but like seriously, if you've built that type of synergy with your roster and you empowered them to be who they need to be and who they are as opposed to forcing them to always curtail to you, he would have been able to do more. He would have won more, and he would be an entirely different conversation. This is not to castrate or besmirch LeBron because he's an all-time great. And when you have an all-time great like that, typically you acquiesce to that all-time great. But there's also times where that all-time great has to acquiesce and relinquish some things for the betterment of the team. We've seen Kobe Bryant have to do it in passing more. In fact, he has a very, very detailed interview where he talks about not only did he have to change how he approached the game to win those other 2 championships outside of Shaq, but he also had to change how he cared about the players and not make it solely just about basketball. It was bigger than that. Michael Jordan had to do something very similar. He had to do it differently. Now, Mike was still Mike, don't get me wrong, but Mike also made sure that he wasn't the primary point at times, even though, again, you can see that. Scotty ball-handled a lot of things of that nature. So there is a method to that madness. Whereas if you really think about it, LeBron James has never had a premier point guard because even if he did have a premier point guard, which I think Rondo was a premier point guard, don't get me wrong, Rondo's probably one of the best IQs we've seen on the court. Because of the way he has to operate, he has to have the ball. It didn't really work. They won, though. Don't get me wrong. But Rondo had to change his game. Rondo also has an interesting interview about that. So if you're someone who is an aficionado on when it comes to basketball, I implore you, please go check those things out. All of this is to say, and I know this is a long way, I'm taking you the scenic route. I don't think Darvin Ham was given the best opportunity, despite the fact that he had an amazing roster, in my opinion, just because of the personality he had to deal with. That never really gets talked about. It's always someone else's fault. When at the end of the day, I do think and I do believe that if LeBron allowed D'Lo to be more of the point, be more natural that way, and we saw spurts of it, he would have been able to consistently get more out of that relationship. I do feel like if they played through AD a lot more, you would see him take over a lot more. Whereas if you really look at him, AD and LeBron, sometimes they occupy the same space. Sometimes it's a very awkward situation on the floor, and there's no coach that can coach that out of LeBron realistically. In fact, it took LeBron to not feel like he was the man almost to do that. You look at the Cavs team, like Kyrie was always going to be Kyrie. Kyrie is a top 75 player. I don't care what anybody says. There's not 74 players better than him in the history of this game. And look at how that, like, he had to be that scoring point guard and things of that nature. Like, it was a forcible situation. And so you can't say it was Kyrie who was impacted. But if you look at Kevin Love's whole game had to change to fit that. He has a nice interview that talked about that and talked about the mental aspect of that as well, which no one gives credit to. And so, it's a love and a hate. It's a blessing and a curse. When you have a LeBron James player, you do have to change a lot to make that work, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a winning record. You're going to at least have, you're definitely going to put butts in seats, and you're definitely going to have a competitive team. How competitive? What does that mean? What does it mean from making other people's better? I don't know if I could say LeBron James has made any individual player better. I can say that he's helped them get to, when you've allowed that system to work, when you've allowed the system to solely be about him, he's taken you far. That's all I can really say about that. And I think Darvin Ham, I think Russell Westbrook, I think D'Angelo Russell, I think some other players. We could just start there. I think they're all casualties of that. All the head coaches who came in with their own game plan, I think they're all casualties of that. And the one thing I will say is, if the new candidate, now being J.J. Redick, comes in, it's going to be because he truly understands why LeBron is the way he is. He's a player. He's been on both sides of this. He would have officially been on both sides of this coin, having to face LeBron. And he'll truly be able to help with the roster construction that's necessary to facilitate that. Like, if you really think about it, someone like JJ would be great to be a coach for someone like LeBron, because he would have been the quintessential or the prototype player for what you need to put around LeBron James. If you put LeBron James and JJ Redick in their prime on the same team, that's a dangerous team, because what is JJ Redick going to do? Screen, curl, pull. He doesn't need to occupy the paint. He's going to be ready for the kick out. His game was predicated on, I'm going to catch, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to do it well, I'm going to do it at elite level. You can't say anything about it. Take this clip. Those type of players are what I think JJ is going to be able to coach to better and be able to understand the greatness of what LeBron James is. But if you're looking for that 1-2 punch for what it was, it's going to be a really hard thing. And I know this, I didn't want to make this around because this is about the Lakers firing Darvin Ham. But I do think, in some ways, a lot of this had to do with the inconsistencies that the players had around LeBron and not as much on Darvin. That's just my take. I want to hear yours. Whether it's love, whether it's say put it in the chat, I'll be in there with you. Till next time. Peace.